This video is brought to you by Ground News. Since coming to power in late 2023, Argentina's President Javier Milei has consistently enjoyed approval ratings above 50%, making him one of the most popular politicians in the world and providing him with the political capital to push through sweeping economic reforms, despite minimal representation in Congress. However, Milei's popularity has been jeopardized this weekend after he promoted a cryptocurrency called Libra on X, which triggered a dramatic rise in its value and then a total collapse when a handful of insiders cashed out, leaving Milei's supporters empty-handed. So in this video, we're going to take a look at what just happened, Milei's role in it, and what might happen next. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. So let's just get straight into it. This story really begins late on Friday evening, when Argentina's President Javier Milei took to X to promote a recently created cryptocurrency called Libra, which he said would raise money to help small companies in Argentina. There was then some panic about whether or not Milei had been hacked. After all, presidents don't usually spend their time promoting meme coins, and there were various signs that the coin was a risky investment. The project had shared no preliminary information about how the cryptocurrency was actually going to work, and not long after Milei's endorsement, commentators pointed out that something like 80% of all Libra coins were held by just a handful of insiders, who could sell their tokens at any point. There was even a community note underneath Milei's post, warning users to, quote, verify before interacting with the project, because it looked suspiciously like what's known in the crypto community as a rug pull, where scammers pump up a cryptocurrency, often via some celebrity endorsement, before suddenly selling all their coins, cashing out and crashing the coin. Nonetheless, the post stayed up for 5 hours or so, and Milei apparently confirmed his support for the token to Bloomberg Linea. So people piled in. In just a couple of hours, some 44,000 of Milei's supporters, and anyone else hoping to capitalise on Milei's endorsement, invested millions of dollars in the coin, and its value skyrocketed. At its peak, the market capitalisation, that is, the total value of all coins in circulation, reached $4.5 billion, up from less than $200 million before Milei's endorsement. Just 3 hours after it started trading, however, those insiders we mentioned earlier suddenly sold all their coins, with just 8 insiders together raking in about $107 million, according to Cointelegraph. This obviously wiped out the token's value, which fell by 94%, leaving the vast majority of the 44,000 who invested after Milei's post with massive losses. A couple of hours into the crash, Milei deleted his post endorsing the coin and created a new post acknowledging his support of the coin, but insisted that he obviously had no connection to it whatsoever and that he wasn't aware of the details of the project beforehand. True to form, Milei finished off his post by blaming the, quote, filthy rats of the political caste who want to take advantage of this situation to do harm. Unfortunately for Milei, this wasn't enough to quiet the subsequent uproar. For starters, even if Milei is telling the truth here, and he genuinely didn't know about the coin, it's not a great look that he, as both a seasoned economist and the president of Argentina, publicly endorsed what looks like, at best, a risky asset, at worst, a scam, without understanding what it was, and only withdrew his support after the coin had crashed. But on top of that, there are a couple of reasons that Milei's excuse that he didn't really understand the coin doesn't quite add up. For starters, Milei seemed relatively well acquainted with both the company that sponsored the coin, KIP Protocol, and the company that actually carried out the launch, a relatively unknown company called Kelsia Ventures. Milei met with KIP Protocol representatives in October, where the company informed him about the Libra, and KIP then joined Buenos Aires City Government Blockchain Committee in January. Similarly, the guy who runs Kelsia Ventures, an American called Hayden Davis, who also seems to have made a lot of money off the coin, claims to be an advisor of Milei's, and apparently met with him in late January to discuss the project. In a statement, Davis actually blamed the crash on Milei for suddenly withdrawing his support, Although we should say that the rug pull happened a couple of hours before Milei deleted his tweet, so this is somewhat implausible. Davis then just gave an interview with another YouTuber, Voidzilla, where he attempted to justify the rug pull, but this hasn't been very well received, and in that interview he seemed to essentially admit that it was both a scam and illegal. Nonetheless, this isn't the first time Milei's been caught up in a crypto scandal. Back in 2021, when he was a national deputy, Milei promoted a platform called CoinX, which offered implausibly high profits of 8% a month, as a way for Argentinians to protect their savings against inflation. Unsurprisingly, this turned out to be a pyramid scheme, and CoinX is currently being investigated for fraud. So, what happens next? Well, on Sunday, Milei's office announced the creation of a new investigation task unit to investigate what happened with Libra and whether anything illegal occurred. But this wasn't enough to quell the uproar either, because, well, it's basically the president investigating himself. On top of that, a lawsuit has already been issued against Milei by a couple of people, including economist Claudio Lozano, who actually used to be the head of Argentina's central bank, claiming that Milei violated Argentina's public ethics law. Specifically, it looks like Milei might have broken Article 265, which banned public officials from using their position for financial benefit, with a maximum sentence of 6 years, although we should say that it doesn't look like Milei himself actually made money from the rug pull. Opposition lawmakers have even said that they'll try to impeach Milei, although this would require the support of 2/3 of deputies in Congress. But even if Milei isn't impeached, it's still bad news for him. For starters, if they can't get a 2/3 majority, other opposition members have instead suggested scrapping Decree 70, which gives Milei sweeping discretionary powers and would only require a normal 50% majority in Congress. But on top of that, this will almost definitely put a dent in Milei's approval ratings, and mean he'll probably win fewer seats at the upcoming midterm elections in October than he would have otherwise. This would be pretty frustrating for Milei. Milei's La Libertad Avanza party currently enjoys pretty minimal representation in Congress, and he would have been hoping that his sky-high personal approval ratings would translate to a strong performance at the midterms, which would have given him more seats in Congress and therefore made it easier for him to legislate. If this weekend's events dent his approval ratings and he can't recover by October, he could struggle at the midterms, which would obviously make things harder for him legislatively, but also dampen investor confidence in Argentina, which has been premised on the idea that Milei's political dominance would translate to legislative dominance, allowing him to actually pass his business-friendly reforms. How Milei tries to respond to all this will be telling and contentious, and won't necessarily be an easy story to follow in the current landscape. We're increasingly being flooded by misleading content, algorithmic feeds that just back up our biases, and reductions in fact-checking efforts. It almost feels like people are intentionally making it harder to get to the truth. One way you can cut through the noise is with Ground News, a website and app on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news. Every day, Ground News ingests over 50,000 articles from all over the world. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. For example, if you take a look at the story about the Argentinian opposition threatening impeachment, right away you can see that the story had at least 272 outlets reporting on it. 33% lean left, while 39% lean right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information, so you can see how reliable the reporting actually is. You can also swipe through some of the headlines to get a more detailed understanding of how reporting might change based on political bias. But my favourite part has to be their blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are being underreported on one side of the political spectrum or the other. This not only helps you redress your personal news bias by reading stories you might otherwise have missed, but also gives you a better perspective on how the media ecosystem is being manipulated and shifted to fit political objectives. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, cutting through opinion and noise with a feed free from manipulation or algorithms, and I can't recommend it enough. In fact, if you subscribe today, you'll get 40% off their Vantage plan. That's under $5 a month for unlimited access to every incredible Ground News feature. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.